Repeat after me. I am going to pass BPT. And honestly, you will. This exam, there's so much talk about how hard it is, how it's the hardest ACA exam. Probably dreading where you are right now. And honestly, that was me. But I didn't actually rank this exam to be my hardest ACA exam. Okay, it's definitely up there, but it's not the hardest. I think with some real hard work, so from my mock to getting 44 to my real exam getting 81, what it goes to show, and hopefully it does give you that confidence that you can actually pass this exam and you will be more than okay. BPT as well, it did actually used to be an advanced level exam, so what that means is that you are almost there, so hang in there and good luck. So BPT, Business Planning Taxation, so yes, it is a tax exam. It's actually got a different angle to tax compliance. So whereas TC was more of the computational side, this exam felt like it really had a different angle. In this exam, I felt like there was honestly just a lot more wider tax content involved. And I feel like it was more of an advice perspective. So you do need to give tax advice in this exam. So you're more so talking through the taxes rather than actually doing the computations itself. But there can be a bit of that as well. This is a 2.5-hour exam and it is extremely time pressured. I think that is where the difficulty comes in. We'll come on to timings later, but yeah, 2.5 hours, very time pressured, and it is also actually open book. So don't think, oh my god, it must be so easy, it's open book. I think it just shows how much content there actually is. In terms of the content itself, there are 3 key examinable areas. It's taxation of corporate entities, owner-managed business, and then also personal tax. And even though it's quite consistent with those 3, within those there are so many different taxes and different things that you need to know that it does just seem like there's so much. Because of that, I found that the exam papers do vary massively from paper to paper. The scenarios all really do change. And there is then a vast amount of application in this exam, but it doesn't actually mean that there are no easy marks. Those marks are ethics. So as an ACA student, you're probably already aware that in most of the professional level exams, there are ethics marks up for grabs. In BPT, there's actually about 5 to 10% of ethics marks. It's 55 to pass overall, and 5 to 10% is actually ethics marks. So that's quite a good chunk of that. As this is an open book exam, what it means is that you can actually kind of create yourself ethics model answer guide in a way. So write down those key ethics areas, tax evasion, tax avoidance, money laundering, etc., and then match those to the model answers and create your own in a way so you can really kind of understand them yourself, but also then you'll know where to flick to in the exam if you need to just look at it quickly. What you do really need to make sure you're doing though is applying to that scenario. Application is just key in BPT, but if you can do this and you can do this with the ethics marks, then you will, or you should be, maxing out on this. And now the next bit of easy marks up for grabs, which I think you might not find as easy. This exam really requires you to master the skill of identifying the relevant taxes from the question. Once you actually do this, you can really pick up some easy marks, but of course you need to know what the question is talking about to then get to that. Then, just really state out the basics of those tax rules, and you should pick up those easy marks, which you can honestly really get from your open book file. That's why I really as well think, and I'll come on to timing later, but it's so important to get through this whole exam. You might spend a lot of time on a last question trying to max out the marks, but the easy marks really are in BPT at the start of the question. So yeah, like I said, not too easy to master that skill, but it does come with practice, and I always say it in all my videos, it is just practice. I went through literally all 60 question bank questions, and I think even at that point, did I think I'd mastered it? I'm honestly not sure, but I think that is what caused my real drastic mark increase from the 44 in the mock to the actual real exam. I think something eventually luckily clicked, and then that's what it was. So also, don't get disheartened if you don't have all that time to go through the whole question bank. So in my working and studying video, I've touched on, taking annual leave and things to help me and give me that time. But if you don't have that, then do just really try your best with it. Make a good revision plan. I do offer that in my description below. You'll be able to find a link to how to get a tailored study plan from me. So feel free to reach out if that's something you're interested in. Also, don't get me wrong, I definitely did not master the skill entirely. So I think when I first started, I was probably picking up about 20% of what was relevant. And then actually, as I went to practice, it really did shoot up. So it probably ended up being about 75 to 85%. A nice benefit of BPT, and something you should remember, is that there are actually more marks available than the maximum amount of marks. Go easy on yourself. You don't need to know it all, but you can definitely get there. So if you do have the choice, I would probably strongly advise actually sitting BPT after tax compliance. You do need to have an understanding of all those tax computations from TC. Don't worry too much if you have to do it the other way around. And a girl in my class did do that, and she did still pass BPT first time. If you do sit BPT after TC though, don't worry, you don't need to go overboard and like really learn how to do those calculations again, because you've already proved that you can do that in TC, but having that understanding of the overall taxes will help. I have read elsewhere that actually about 60% of TC content comes up again in BPT, but I still do just think like that same level of detail isn't needed. It's up to you how thoroughly you go with recapping, but I think through doing the question practice in BPT, you should be covering all of the content that you need for the exam. My approach for BPT, as with probably all ACA exams, I literally just threw myself into question practice. I'd go through the content about once and I would just get straight to it. That's the method that I preferred. If you prefer to really learn it a lot more, that is up to you. But I think because this exam is so applied to the scenarios, it helps getting as much practice as you can. The key is just to really make sure that you're debriefing your answers, you're learning from your mistake, and you're just identifying your weak areas and just constantly going over it. If you're wondering about the TC questions and TC Question Bank, it might be obvious by this point, but no, I didn't go back and start doing those questions again. I did actually take the TC Question Bank with me into the exam, but more as like a comfort blanket. So actually in my BPT exam, it did ask about a calculation, and I tried to go and get the model answer from the TC Question Bank, and I just really couldn't find it, and I should have just moved on, because that meant that I lost time and actually didn't get to complete that question. So I was quite worried in the end, but fortunately it was okay. So in terms of new BPT concepts, it is definitely important to have a good understanding of those. Those are likely to be examined. But like I'm going to keep saying, it is a open book exam, completely open book. You can take in anything that you want. So just keep practicing. You don't need to nail it and memorize it all. Hopefully you are just okay then. I do actually know someone who actually didn't do too much question practice. They really understood the content and they did still pass. But I think because of how much application's needed in this exam, I personally think that's risky. So this open book that you've probably all really thought about, you wanting to know how to make the best open book that you can, and trust me, I've been there, but you don't really need to reinvent the wheel with this one, and I'll talk you through what I did. Bear in mind now that it's all in the digital bookshelf now, so things might be different, but I'll try and help where I can still. So I started off, and my basis for my open book was some summary notes. So I studied with Kaplan. If you're studying with Kaplan BPT, they should provide you with some summary notes. Otherwise, I'm sure you can get some online somewhere. To be honest, you can actually probably ask people as well from your work, hopefully, and they should be able to kind of share something with you. But if you are going down that route, be careful, because the tax rules and rates can change from year to year, so just be mindful of that. Found summary notes are just great to have, like the basics all there, and then you can really build on it. Building won't happen straight away. For me, it was actually as I was practicing questions, I would go through and then slowly, as I was debriefing, just start building it up and just writing more and more things onto these notes. I personally found as well, to have a really solid open book, it helped me to just have question references as well, so I knew which questions had model answers for that tax. In terms of the question bank, I've already said I went through the whole thing. I planned backwards from the date of the exam, and I was pretty much doing a question a day. So what would probably help with this exam is if you were doing the same kind of taxes back to back. The ICAEW Question Bank for BPT does have a contents page at the front that kind of tells you that. But to be honest, I just did it randomly and I was okay. So again, it's up to you. I found just by throwing myself into the question bank, in the first 10 to 15 questions that I did, I was very out on my depth. Like, I think I spent more time going through the answers, probably like an hour or whatever, going through the answers rather than actually doing it. I think I started off just really trying to identify the relevant taxes that I thought it might be kind of touching on in the scenario. But yeah, it required a lot of hard work and time to begin with. This is probably why it is a bit better to have a decent understanding of the content first. But I think because it is so much application, really learning from the question bank and from the debriefing of your answers and slowly mastering the skill, that will really help you. In this debriefing time, this is where I'd go back to my summary notes, I'd find that relevant section that it is actually talking about, and then I would, I'd actually write up from the model answers those more generic types of rules that can be applied to other questions if it came up in the exam. So when debriefing, this is when I'd always go back to my summary notes, I would find the relevant tax area, and then I would actually write up, the corresponding question to that. So I'd always know, okay, this has a model answer to this type of question, and this is where I can look it up. Any kind of key parts of the answers though that are more generic that I felt could be applied to maybe other questions, I would also actually write that all out, so I'd have that, so I could literally turn to it in the exam, see it and think, oh yeah, this is relevant, I can write this and get some marks. So as time went on, and hopefully what you'll find is that your confidence should begin to grow as your open book file does, and actually you'll start to really realize that you kind of know things yourself too. And once you get to this point, and you will get to this point, for me it was quite close to my exam, but I really found that I didn't need to completely rely on my notes, which was quite good, and I had felt that I had almost really mastered that skill. That's where then the issue turns to timing, and I'll come on to that. I do though definitely think you should start practicing to time though where you can as early on. Of course not when you're in the very early stages and quite, out of your depth, but once you're starting to get the hang of things, then it is a good idea to think about your timing. Now, when you actually get closer to the exam and you've had a chance to go through the majority of questions, or however many you can practice with still a few unseen, you should hopefully be familiar with those that are the most popular topics. So what I did, and I thought it actually worked pretty well, and what I'd recommend is kind of writing up those generic answers for those. So for me, I actually did it for residency status, sole trader versus a company, kind of things like that that are likely to come up as well. I would then always have those references to the model answers in the question bank, because that can just sometimes help you, especially when you're like, hang on, I've seen something really similar to this before. And that did actually happen to me for one of my questions. Remember though, always apply it to the actual scenario that you have. That is just key with BPT. I'll keep saying it. I also had a really good BPT tutor who also sent out his own model answers for certain topics, so that was really helpful too. Again, it's just once you've mastered the skill, then you do have those easy marks that you can start churning out. If you do actually join my journey, link in the description below, then you can actually get access to the model answers that I'm referring to here, so hopefully they help you kind of give you an idea of what to do. Sticky tabs actually helped me so much in this exam. So it really just helps you cut time where you can, and you need that in this exam. It's crazy. So the way that I actually tied the question bank to the summary notes is with the sticky tabs. So I would kind of position them in the same place on the corners of the page. So I knew, okay, this is this topic and this is where it's been asked. Here are all the questions that I can quickly flick to and find relevant to it. I made sure to do this as I was going along, because if you do it at the end, it becomes really time pressured and consuming. So do definitely, as you go along, just really build everything up. With the digital bookshelf, it might be a bit more difficult now, but I think it still helps with the summary notes, definitely. So do still make use of those sticky tabs. With the digital bookshelf, it might be kind of hard to go from the summary notes, then to find it, then to look up the question. It just seems a bit longer, so I've got a few ways that can hopefully get you around this. If you're a student who's also sat and can provide advice, then do drop those in the comments below. That would be greatly appreciated too. I do also have ACA Telegram groups where you can connect with other ACA students, and hopefully there are some tips there that will work for you. But the ones that I've kind of thought of is, to maybe actually just print a few of the model answers if you can, and those are ones that you'll frequently look at, so you can avoid having to constantly keep searching it up. You can maybe also have a BPT question reference sheet. So I think other students have said actually that in the digital bookshelf you can actually search for page numbers. So where I was writing certain question bank questions down, you can maybe write the page numbers and that could work. You might still be able to get hard copies, I'm not sure, but if you do that route, ensure that it is actually the correct tax years and rates that are relevant to your exam. I think it is just probably best actually to avoid over relying on the question bank to see other model answers. I think once you build it up with your summary notes, those generic model answers and the other model answers that you can create, hopefully that should be enough. And then practice makes perfect, so do also get on that digital bookshelf as early as you can. For BPT, as you have a TC given the Hardman's tax rates and tables, you also get that in this exam too. But to be honest, I found that because I'm using my summary notes, which already has all of the relevant rates and things, and I'm not going into as much detail with the computations, I didn't really need it as much. I just took up my tab TC version because I actually sat both in the same year, so that was fine. But I think I didn't really use it much at all, to be honest, but I did have it there with me. I've mentioned a lot of different things here that formed my open book file, so I've touched on these already, but to summarize, it was those summary notes that I had really annotated and tabbed up, referencing then of course the ICAEW Question Bank, which I also took with me, and that was BPT, also all annotated and tabbed up. And then it also mentioned the TC Question Bank, which did actually waste my time in the end. That is fine, it was a bit of a comfort blanket. And then I also had those Hardman's tax tables, and I did have my full Kaplan integrated workbook, so the longer version of those summary notes, just in case. You might be thinking, what about the ICAEW study manual? And no, I did not take that in with me. I think there's just too much in there, and I think I already had enough as it was, but again, you can take it with you if you'd like. Yeah, this is very tricky in BPT. I think it's the hardest of all of the ACA exams in terms of timing. Setting up your timing in this exam, I think it is, many tutors have said this is the main reason that students do fail this exam, and it is because of timing. So remember, the easy marks are at the start of the question, so you do need to get there. As if BPT isn't complicated enough, you're actually not told the marks for all of the sub questions. So you're given the marks for the overall 3 big questions, but then it's not broken down further into each of the sub requirements of that question. What I think is a good idea, and what I did, is actually just planned, and I tried to actually allocate the marks out myself between those sub requirements. And no, it's not always going to be spot on, but it is 150 minutes the exam, so it's 1.5 minutes per mark. That means once you kind of estimate the marks for each requirement, you should then be able to figure out how much time to spend on each. So what really helps is looking carefully at the wording here. So explain would take more time than say describe. And also, you already know the ethics marks are maximum 10%, so I usually would say about 7 marks for this, and no more than 15 minutes on that section. Can't stress enough how important timing is with this exam, so do please really take it seriously. It's not to be overlooked. Practice as early as you can. I remember in my exam at the start, my hands literally froze up. I felt like I was just not typing as fast as I needed to, and yeah, I had to just really keep pushing through that exam. So being strict with my timing then definitely helped moving forward. Finally, the ICAEW software. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is a gentle reminder that the software is constantly changing all the time. Do not make it be the reason if you do potentially end up slipping up in this exam. Hopefully you're fine, but yeah, just really try and practice that software. Links are in the description below for access to practice on that, and just do it. That is what worked for me with BPT. It's definitely not the right way. There are probably other ways to do it as well and go about it, but hopefully that helps if you had no idea where to start. For nearly all of the exams, I did just so much preparation and question practice. It probably wasn't all needed, but that's just me. So again, don't be alarmed or overwhelmed by that. I think just do what's manageable for you. And remember, there really is a reason why students do rank this to be the hardest ACA exam. So don't worry if you're also feeling like very very stuck with it at times, but just keep persevering, and hopefully, you know, you do eventually master that skill and things finally click. Like I said, good luck. I hope this video helped. If it did, then do give it a like. Any questions, anything at all, drop them in the box below. I'd be happy to answer those. And as always, I'll be back with more videos every single week, so make sure to subscribe, and hopefully you'll see me again soon. Thanks.